Welcome, Ecom Logistics Nation. Thank you for joining today's episode. We're on a mission to share e-commerce logistics insights, trends, successes, and challenges from the leaders and innovators in our space.
And the fact that every return has its own story, that's the problem. You don't have that certitude of, is it the item that somebody said it was? You need technology, you need software, you need automation, you need help to do this efficiently, because if it's just an adjunct to another system, the point is it's going to show tangibly in your cost.
Welcome to today's episode with Amena Ali, a trailblazer in software innovation and a leader in transforming retail returns logistics. With a career spanning over 25 years, Amena has been instrumentally leading Optoro in processing over 125 million returns and making significant strides in the industry with partners like Gap and Best Buy, to just name a few. It's our pleasure to have you with us today, Amena. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on with you guys. Love your show and love being on here, so thank you for having me.
Thank you, Amena.
Yes, thank you for that. And we definitely want to talk about your career journey over the past 25 years. But before we go there, would love for you to share with the audience what drives the passion that you have and where that why comes from for entering the reverse logistics space.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And for me, the why has really informed my entire career journey. And what really struck me about return and reverse logistics is just the mountainous, ginormous problem that it represents. It's not easy. It's hard, and it's not going anywhere. In fact, it's getting worse. So as I'm sure you all know, that the trends are pretty stark in terms of what has happened since the pandemic. Returns are up 3.5x. The rate of return is super high. We're talking 18 to 30% for overall goods and for soft goods, as compared to brick and mortar, which is more like in the 11%, so significantly higher. And it's something that people are accustomed to, so we need to figure out what to do. So for me, my why in joining Optoro was just the fundamentals of the market dynamics and how there's a real opportunity here to say, can you come up with a win-win-win kind of solution, which is a win for shoppers, a win for retailers and brands, and really a win for the environment. Because if you don't do this correctly, there is so much waste here. There's waste and friction like across the entire process, and it ends up in landfills. So really, that's what really impelled me.
Absolutely love that. And maybe could you share with, you've been with Optoro as CEO for about a year and a half now. So maybe just walk everyone through what your life and journey was like before that move.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was a wee tot, started off in management consulting at Bain & Company, where I really kind of learned how to frame and analyze problems and think analytically about root causes and outcomes and how you work with people. Really great training ground. And then I spent, after business school, about 10 years at MCI. That was in the heyday of deregulation. Like, nobody thought anyone would pay money for dial tone, okay? It's kind of like no one thought anybody would buy bottled water either. Like, who would do that? But that's really the essence of product. So really kind of cut my teeth in the product and marketing aspects and then switched to finance. So my journey kind of went 10 years in telecom, and then for the last 25 years, it's software. Every flavor of software. We're talking infrastructure software, security software, clean tech software, identity management software, SaaS, DaaS, subscription, perpetual, you name it, we got it. So it's all of those flavors. And from a functional perspective, I've kind of made the rounds from management consulting to product marketing, to then, sales and business development, finance for sure, a big stint in finance, to CRO, to CEO. So this is my third CEO gig. And so far, it's an amazing opportunity to really make an impact. So, my core why, ever since I had little kids and I had to do work, said, why do you actually work? Why do you do what you do? And in today's 24/7 world, you're thinking about this stuff all the time, right? You long for the days like pre your smartphone when there was a delineation between work and home. Like now, those boundaries are completely porous, right? You can be reached at any time for anything. So it's really important that a sense of mission drives why you show up to work, why you work with a team, why you drive the organization to do what it does. So making an impact has really been a core foundation for my entire work journey.
While you say that, the blending of work, and even before we get into reverse logistics and returns, I mean, do you have any advice on like people trying to find balance? Because that is actually the reality. It's like you are always available, or you are now kind of expected to be available. How do we kind of go back to finding a little bit of work again?
To me, the phrase that's more helpful is work-life integration, because I feel like all of these technologies have like broken the boundaries between work and home. So you need to figure out the right integration blend that works for you. And whether that is like you have little kids and it's after hours, or, maybe sometimes on the weekend, I do some of my think work on the weekend because I don't have the constant stream of activities pinging me. So I think it's really important to figure out what's that integration such that you're balancing that equation and like taking care of yourself, taking care of your family. I mean, my work team is my team. I went back to working at startups when my kids left the nest, because I thought, who are my new babies, right? It's like, get these startups, that they're your new kids. So it just kind of depends how you frame it. But to me, having kind of healthy, sustainable integration is critical. Because if you go too far one direction or too far the other direction, it doesn't work for the long run. And really, this is not specific to reverse, but I think the core to that is establishing trust and relationships. Because what enables you to do the right thing over the long term? You have to trust that that person is there. You're taking care of them, they're taking care of you, and you're in it together. So this is not today's topic, but that's why I think face-to-face is critical for establishing that rapport and that trust that, if you're on like a 20-person Zoom call, it's hard to achieve that.
Agreed. And I mean, just one thing I'll say is just yesterday, which was a Sunday, I'm sitting doing some of my thinking work and some of the work, and in Microsoft Teams, I'm looking at who's online, and I can see 6 or 7 people that are actually showing green, essentially working at the same time. And it's the urge to kind of message, but hold back to say, okay, if it's not really urgent, if it's not important, this can wait until tomorrow. There is literally no need. The accessibility, right? It does not shut off. It's always there in your phone, in your app, in your computer, wherever you are, all the time. So trying to find the balance.
Right. And you know what? I mean, I find that it's really important to create some distance so that you can reflect and bring creativity. Because if you're always in response mode, that doesn't give you the ability to step back and kind of think about what are the dots you need to connect? How can you approach things? Personally, I like to do my one-on-ones while I'm out for a walk. If it's a nice day, I'll get off Zoom and just talk one-on-one on the phone, old-fashioned style, while I'm going for a walk. And that really helps me sort of reflect, step back, literally look at the sky and then think about what problem are we trying to solve. So, a strategy that works for me.
That's great advice. To frame up the podcast, I would love for those audience members that aren't familiar with Optoro, can you give a high-level overview just to frame your perspective?
Yes, absolutely. So Optoro has been around for over a dozen years, and we have been focused squarely on returns and reverse logistics. So we take a systems thinking view to returns, thinking about the entire life cycle of the returns with what we call a returns management system, or RMS, that really looks at the entire journey of a return, from initiation to transport to actually receiving and dispositioning, to get it back to stock, get the refunds to customers, end to end, soup to nuts. And it's critical to take that entire view of something as complex as returns and reverse.
You know what? You make a really good point on that front, right? The best example that I can kind of draw upon of how different returns happens to be, or reverse logistics, or the execution of the returns happens to be, it's like saying if there was a WMS that did really good retail systems or ship to store or store replenishment type of logic or distribution logic, and then go, okay, I got e-commerce. And all of a sudden now you need to be able to do this where you could ship one box of 10,000 pencils versus shipping 10,000 pencils, right? Like, so that in itself, the delineation, the operational efficiency, all the requirements, you're no longer shipping a box, you're shipping to literally 10,000 individual customers. The change that it brings to the table, I think returns is even wilder when it comes to that, right? Like, so yeah, it looks like a box comes back in, but everything else that happens after that is so unique that it does not reflect your traditional standards of what processes in general warehouses, be it an e-commerce warehouse or be it a retail footprint warehouse, or it doesn't matter what kind of warehouse. What happens after is extremely unique and how different it happens to be. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. They're like, oh, I have a really good WMS. Yeah, but do you really have good returns capability in your WMS to do what your business actually requires? I think the realization just does not exist in the market still to a certain degree, specifically the new entrants that are still learning the logistics side. Of course, the hypergiants realize it, and thus we have Optoro around for a dozen years or so. And I mean, I would now consider you the OGs in this space, along with a few others.
Yeah, I think you have to say, how is forward different from reverse? And what is different in each step? And the fact that every return has its own story, that's the problem. You don't have that certitude of, is it the item that somebody said it was? Is it in the condition that you were expecting it? How does it compare to why they're returning it? How do you receive it? What do you do with it? All of those things. Because, you know, you think about what did the Industrial Revolution do, right? You think about the production of automobiles. You're bringing standardization. And so it is really hard to standardize all of these items that are coming back individually. And that's been candidly one of the most eye-opening things is for me coming in new to this business about a year and a half ago to go into these warehouses and look at what happens when all of this entire catalog comes back. You got people receiving all manner of things. And imagine the SOPs required to ascertain, is it new or not new? What do I do with it, right? So we get to the art and science of receiving, dispositioning, and that's where you say, you know what? There has to be a better way. You need technology, you need software, you need automation, you need help to do this efficiently, because if it's just an adjunct to another system, the point is it's going to show tangibly in your costs. This is not like some esoteric business case. This is like, what's your receiving units per hour? What is your recovery percentage? What's your adherence to SOPs? All of this stuff can be measured.
Yeah, and all the way from like, where is the return being originated, and trying to help make decisions to say, what should you even do with this return? I mean, a refund's a huge subject at this point, right? Like, at what point do you do the refund, right? We have processes today that essentially kind of lean into, oh, let's do consolidated returns. And these consolidated returns, then it gets back to wherever it needs to. After 2 weeks of returning, my refund is stuck for 2 weeks. That's not a good customer experience that I want. Now, in some cases, it might work because it's general merchandise, it's cheap, or you might just trust and give it back. But if you got high value products, yeah, I want my money back now. And so even at that opportunity, how do I regenerate a sale opportunity as part of the returns itself? And then making the decision to say, based on all the historical information that I have, what should I do with this return? Should I bring it back? Or should I just send it back to the vendor because that's what my contract says, that I'm not going to resell this given product? And I don't think most people even realize, like, there is brands and then there is the retailers or the general merchandisers and electronics, etc., right? The complexity of having hundreds of thousands of products, having thousands, if not tens of thousands of vendors or suppliers that you purchase this from, having different agreement for what can be returned, how it can be returned, and the depth that it goes into, and then being able to do it in a way that you remove tribal knowledge, because the labor problems in a return center are the same as a forward warehouse, right? It's no different. Now you got to take tribal knowledge out while looking at all of these levels of complexities that you have to go through. So it's interesting. And Something you said, and I want to kind of touch upon this. You said the art and science of dispositioning, and I want to touch on the art and the science of dispositioning. Before I say anything, I think it's ideal if you were to explain, just because you have one of the leading systems when it comes to dispositioning, which is the heart of it. Can you explain to people what does that mean?
Happy to. And so let's talk about the art and science of dispositioning. So you think about what is required to be received. So first, problemo, right? Where does the dispositioning system start? And like you were saying, Ninad, it needs to start at receipt. Let's not even wait till it gets to the warehouse. Let's use early dispositioning to figure out, as I'm consolidating returns, as I'm actually giving you the option to return, let me do some analysis from the get-go to say, what is the cost of transporting that item versus the cost of you keeping it versus, are you a trustworthy shopper? Are you an abusive shopper? All of that needs to go in the system at hello, right? Hello is, I'm initiating the return. So we need to get you at hello in terms of what kind of shopper profile you are. Fundamentally, it's about establishing trust, understanding profitability, building loyalty. You brought up the exchange item. This is all part of the art and science of dispositioning, that you need to bring data science at hello at the point of return to see if you want to offer an exchange, what kind of exchange, and then do you need to make decisions on where you're spending your precious transport dollars. Do you want to, even with a consolidated situation, bring that back, or do you want to offer customer keep, depending on the nature of the item? And then if so, where do you want to send that item? And how is it received? So one of the most exciting things that we've done, and perhaps this is more the science and the art aspect of it, is actually integrated into robotics. And we've integrated with a couple of different ways to really maximize automation. We have directed sorting, which is for high-speed receiving. That's kind of one kind of robotics we've integrated to. That's like a Honeywell system. And then we've integrated into Locus for cobots that work with warehouse operators to do pick and pack. So that is all part of the science of how do you have software that's fundamentally looking at what is the cost of a given outcome, a given workflow I might send an RMA through, the opportunity with the channel that I might send that workflow to, and then how do I optimize that? How do I configure it? Do I have pre-established or templated workflows I offer to you to say, hey, if you're like other retailers like yourself, you might want to start with this recipe book or templates. And then you configure and optimize based on what kind of channels you have. And frankly, that becomes both a reduce costs and maximize recovery kind of a deal. Because as we all know, the best outcome is, if the item is new, is send it back to stock as soon as possible so that you can get maximum recovery. And this is where time really is money. The longer it takes you, like you said, if you have an item that's been sitting around in some consolidated bucket for a while, it eventually gets to a warehouse. What is the speed with which you receive it? What's the intelligence with which you disposition it? How do you know what's the best way? And we have some customers who say, you know, I'm actually optimizing for this kind of product and that vendor, and I have different goals for another product and another vendor. And all of that needs to be possible and easily configurable through a self-service capability to really figure out how do you optimize the disposition such that you can sit back and say, for these customers, I'm going to do refund at receipt. So the moment you scan it, I know Ninad is a trustworthy customer. Maybe he's in my loyalty program. Maybe I know how much he buys. Maybe I know through data science the frequency with which he's buying and returning. So then you need to separate out who are your most valuable shoppers who return a lot, return a little. Maybe Dan has a different profile than you do. And my rules for Dan would be different than my rules for Ninad in terms of when do I actually give the credit such that, you know, real life example, we have one customer who decided to do, quite reasonably, refund after warehouse receipt. So then what happens? You have peak season. You have truckloads of RMAs waiting to come back. And you have all these customers waiting for their refunds. You're going to get a lot of irate calls to your customer call center to say, hey, where's my refund? I'm a good customer. I've been waiting for you. And so that then gets to how labor intensive are returns. And returns are 2 to 3 times more labor intensive than forward. So what does that mean? It means your best people are on the line working returns. You got lots of tribal knowledge. So I'm painting this kind of multifaceted picture because that really speaks to the complexity of the problem and why you need software and automation to help you kind of work through each piece of it.
Absolutely. I mean, just to think about it, right? From returns initiation, dispositioning starts at that point, right? Like the intent is where it starts to say the combination of customer, the merchant, which is you, the seller, and the vendor or the distributor that is in the equation, and be able to try and figure out what's best for everyone and meet their objectives and goals. Am I trying to maximize margin? Am I trying to please the customer? Am I trying to comply to certain standards that the vendor might have? How do I bring it back? When it comes back, what should I do with this item? Let's just say I might make a decision. This is like a feedback loop on a almost data science level to say, I am making a decision based on X, Y, and Z that I will be able to sell this item within the next 1 month, and that's why it should be liquidated. But you can also be wrong. And if you're wrong, being able to automatically redisposition to say, hey, that product, it's creating a long tail. We might want to try and do a different disposition, or we should do it and try and automatically move this product into a different category. Because at the end of the day, at that point, from a merchant's perspective, it's maximizing the margin, the profit, the recovery that you can get from the product. So just the sheer amount that goes into it, and that's where it goes back to dispositioning. Like WMS is, again, they're evolving, but they don't cut it. Like you need specialized system if you got complexities that are built into your environment. And yeah, of course, you can always do like, if it's good, put it back in stock. If it's bad, destroy it, right? Like that's easy. But that works for brands and merchants. That's like much easier. Complexity, the moment you got vendors, the moment you have low margins, and specifically right now, as we went through the 3 last year, I think, everyone's kind of focused on returns. I've never heard so many people talk about returns ever in this space. It was always an afterthought, and it's no longer an afterthought. It's like number one.
Yeah. I would also add to that, you need all of this kind of purpose-built software for receiving, for returns reconciliation, right? What happens when something isn't, what the customer intended? It could be an accident. I'm returning a couple of things. I mixed up the boxes or the items in there. All of that is like all of this manual touching of goods. Every touch means costs add up and recovery goes down, right? That is your margin buster. So how do you streamline those things is absolutely critical in terms of driving down the costs and improving the margin. And you're absolutely right. I've been to, I don't know how many trade shows now since January, since NRF kicked off the season, as it were. And I think it's prime time for returns because the volumes are so high, right? We all saw the NRF data coming out, $750 billion, like $250 billion for online. And here's the other flavor. Now that we've all learned to live with the pandemic, which has become an endemic, now we have all these omni-channel things happening, right? You've got Boris happening, buy online, return in store. Just think about the complexity that introduces. I've got retailers coming to us saying, wow, this is really changing the nature of my shopper experience, that people are walking in with like armloads of returns. What does that do to the efficiency? And just imagine what happens in the back of the store, because quite often you're not going to have consistency in terms of the merchandise you ordered versus what's being walked in. So I think the problem is just getting more complex, which means that I'm a firm believer that technology exists to try to help people solve these kinds of problems. And that's what we focus on.
Agreed. Changing dynamics.
Completely agree. And I think you and Anand have just done a fantastic job framing up how big the problem is, how complex the problem is. But we've been seeing a bunch of innovation. And as Anand and you both said, Amena, like over the past conference peak season here, returns has been talked about a lot. So from an innovation standpoint, it's not just about solving for the customer experience and what that customer expectation is. It's for enhancing operational efficiency, You just recently said 2 to 3 times the labor or cost to process a return than it is to fulfill an inbound order. Would love to get your thoughts and comments about what innovative solutions you're excited about right now that are kind of helping for that complexity, not just e-commerce, but certainly the omni-channel environment that we're in today.
Yeah, great question, Dan. I'm excited about a couple of innovations that, we're spending a lot of time on. One is if you actually connect the dots between initiation and transport and then the processing and disposition, like, what can you get by connecting the dots from a data insight standpoint that would actually drive you to make decisions? One of the things that we see retailers and brands struggling with is what kind of returns policy should I have? And is this a one-size-fits-all scenario? Do I say everybody gets, refund at the warehouse, nobody gets refund at scan, right? So there's customer-facing kinds of things. How do I offer exchanges? And do I have to make you wait till I get your product back? That could take 3 weeks, 4 weeks until you get the money back such that you can buy a new product. So you're trying to make a lot of these decisions that are customer facing and that's operationally and logistics facing in terms of your operator productivity. And so I think one of the biggest opportunities is to figure out how can data inform more intelligent, thoughtful, and really optimal decisions such that one size doesn't fit all. You think about the airlines have done a great job. You've got multiple tiers of customers and how they treat their diamond level customers is not the same. Think about the order in which you board an airplane. Can you tell I'm getting ready to go on a flight tomorrow? Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, Group 4. I mean, they've effectively figured out what your behavior is and what benefits accrue to you. I think the same, conceptually, is the kind of approach you can take to figuring out how do you have thoughtful policies that you drive for what kinds of offers you get, for should you be charged for returns or not. Maybe if you're bordering on the abusive side, the era of free returns should be over for you. Maybe you incent some people to leverage. I mean, we've got a variety of offerings that are basically the knobs and levers to optimize this. So to us, it's a big sort of optimization exercise to use data to understand how you can make the right policies. The second thing I will tell you, which is exciting, is really the intersection of cobots and robots with software intelligence in the warehouse. I was referring to it a moment ago. The amazing thing is for the directed sorting integration that we've done, you look at units per hour and that literally goes up by orders of magnitude. So it goes up from 75 to 100 units per hour to like 8,000 units per hour. I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing. So I think that's a really exciting opportunity. So to me, it's really about data and the technology and how that intersects with what's happening in the four walls of your own DC or your 3PL, as well as the shopper experience.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned the data piece. And yeah, digging into the data, I don't think, again, the same thing as like an afterthought. Like everyone's looking at transportation spend to say, where can I save 3, 4, 5% in general, right? Like from a forward transportation, it accounts for 20, 30% of, logistics or more for a lot of brands, right? And so that's where the focus was. As people are working on that, and now specifically, you are seeing folks starting to focus on saying, wait, so if I got 18 to 30% is my returns, and if I can try and find just 5% efficiency, 5% improvement, it can truly mean something meaningful to my bottom line. Like it could actually make or break my year, right? Like to a certain degree. So the returns data itself, just something that has always been ignored and being able to kind of focus on that. And this, the second thing I'll call out, and you spoke about like the cobots and the machine and the automation side of things. I also feel just nascent capabilities, right? Like $150 camera using a computer vision model can go a long way because most of the activities on the return side of the business is tribal knowledge based. what is the condition of this product, right? Like, so we spoke about dispositioning. Dispositioning essentially is someone's got to say what's the condition, and then we got to run a whole bunch of logic and say, what's the disposition? Should I put it back in stock, send it back to vendor, destroy it, salvage it, donate it, whatever you may have it. With a simple camera and computer vision and AI, the stuff that you can do to, maybe it's not perfect day one, and it might just be able to sort 50% of the products or 25% of the products, but it will improve and get you to that efficiency. And I think even that, from an accuracy more than efficiency standpoint, could become really good too. I got to add one more thing to that list that you had mentioned, and that's specifically computer vision and where it can go as far as returns is concerned. And yeah, automation, that makes a lot of sense. And so you do have current implementation of some of these automations. You mentioned Honeywell. So maybe you can talk about like the use case so, you know, the audience can understand how it's being used.
Yeah, so the use case is you have thousands upon thousands of returns from a major national retailer that I'm not at liberty to share the name. But
yeah, of course.
You would know it, you know, coming in, and they've got a couple of large return centers that handles inventory from across the country. And so you have this huge efficiency that's been put into play on the front end with a robot for the receiving. So it's really a receiving system. And now what's interesting is that on the back end for the same customer, they were receiving a lot of baby gear. And, you know, with the regulations the way they are, it's kind of challenging. So unless you have specific custom built test and grade and refurbishment and whatnot, there's laws to make sure that, you know, whatever it's car seats and playpens and baby gates and everything else that you need. And so they were actually, it wasn't making sense without us integrating our system and a re-commerce channel. They were actually wasting all of that inventory. And now they're getting this tens of millions of dollars because we've integrated in a partner of ours to actually handle that re-commerce. So kind of front end, it's receiving. On the back end, it's recovery. I like your idea of a lot of this is visual inspection. So we have stitched in data science, machine learning, and AI into a variety of our software offerings. I mean, you can't do automation without those tools. And so I think if you put the kind of visual recognition as the next aspect, it'd be a beautiful thing.
Yeah. As far as innovation is concerned, Amena, I got to say, I'm super excited about where this space can go and what it can do, from automation to machine learning to customer interaction. You mentioned like the tiering of the customers, like, you know, you are platinum, gold, silver, diamond, whatever. But I think with some of the available data, even if you aren't signed up for, let's say, a membership program, recognizing who you happen to be, and you touched on it earlier in the pod where you kind of mentioned like, based on data science, I can kind of see that Ninad's trustworthy. He might not be signed in. He might be just a guest user, being able to make decisions based on that. And it's like, oh, you are a customer that's, I don't know, zone 5, right? You bought the cheapest ticket. Then guess what? You're going to have to pay for the return if you want to return it. And the policy that applies to you is a different policy in general. It's also like a hotel room booking, right? You can get your regular rate room, or you can get the premium room where you can do a cancellation 24 hours before, or, you know, noon the same day, versus if you get the cheap rate, guess what? It's got to be 7 days before that you need to actually do the cancellation. And I think we used to, and from the FedEx days, our history as FedEx, and we used to always say, there is nothing called free returns because someone's paying for it, right? There is always a cost of returning. And now with the margin pressures, of course, we got to take some of those things into consideration and try and find the right solution. And I think that's where data science, machine learning, these capabilities are going to come into play to kind of help out.
Yeah, I think we need all of the above, because it is 6 to 7 times more expensive to acquire a customer than to retain a customer, right? That's loyalty marketing 101. So the question is, how do you find the people who you want to keep? And you don't want to penalize them. You don't want a couple of bad apples actually turning away the golden goose or the golden egg or what have you. Like, you don't want a couple of bad folks to actually impact the people who are driving the vast majority of your profits, of your revenue. You actually want to deepen engagement and intimacy with them. And I think that's where you need to look at it, not just as what policies do I set with customers, but what's happening in the warehouse, because all of this stuff is connected. So I don't see it as, well, this over here is your operations and logistics situation, and this over here is your e-commerce and marketing people's decision, because all of that actually is connected, which is why actually CFOs tend to be some of our best friends at these customers, because you understand the linkage between what's your margin, what's your revenue, what's your pricing, and you're right, nothing in life is free. So that cost is being borne somewhere in the equation, and the more you can do to boost the margins and the revenues, actually, the more you can grow the business and offer more services and offerings to all the great customers you have.
Exactly. And the thing that I've observed with this space is, along with the innovations that have happened in, tech over the last decade and a half, is this API-based kind of ecosystem of saying, choose the best in breed to build your own supply chain, right? And I think that's where we can be like, okay, maybe for my experience management for returns, I need a different solution. For data, I might need a different solution, and execution might be a different solution. Ideal state, yeah, you want to package it all, right? And there is that you can buy these things in chunks, as well as you can actually buy a single package and be able to do it. And I mean, that is why some folks are still using, phone returns, using their Salesforce platform and their traditional WMS to do returns, and they don't realize how much they are actually leaving at the table. Just one from a tech perspective, blockchain. And the reason why I bring that is and maybe blockchain shouldn't be like the starting statement, but authenticity, right? And the challenges with authenticity in this space. There is so much going on, people buying stuff, putting the wrong thing in the box, sending it back, looks almost similar, right? Buy a PlayStation 5, take the old broken one, put it back into the box and ship it back, right? There is all of these set of challenges. How is the industry addressing this particular problem? Because with the increase in the rate of returns, more and more challenges are going to start showing up. And how can a retailer, a brand, a merchant think about authenticity and validation and fraud from a data capture and management perspective?
Yeah, love that question. It was a $100 billion problem last year. So this is not like, oh yeah, think about it if you have a moment, it's here. So I think step one is, how do you use the data to basically separate out who are the people who are bracketing? I think this is a continuum. I don't think this is binary. You have bracketing, you have wardrobing, you have abuse, and then you have out and out fraud, where, you've got the proverbial box of rocks coming back or something that's not there. And I think that's where it is all the more imperative to look at what is received in the warehouse. What is that item? What it was supposed to be? Is it in the condition it's supposed to be in? Is it the wrong item? And then how do you have a closed loop back to who is the shopper? How do you grade them? And, how do you track it such that you can say, well, I thought Ninad was one of my valuable customers. Here's what's happening. Something has changed here. So frankly, I think the credit card companies do a great job, right, of spotting fraud. And all of that fundamentally is a data problem, and you have to have the right data in terms of what's being received, what is the condition, and frankly, how am I going to set up policies, maybe based on what's the price? I mean, if you have a piece of jewelry that's coming back, that might be a completely separate workflow than if you have a fleeced hoodie coming back, right? So you need to understand, based on the category and the product, what makes sense, and how do you establish trust, and what are those levels of trust in terms of the receiving, basically the test and grade and the validation that's happening in the warehouse, and how that links to what's allowable.
Oh, makes sense. Just one thing I'll say about that is, you brought the credit card example of tracking fraud. See, with the credit cards, I still remember about 10, 12 years ago when they started really doing it, is their systems were so early stage that every time I would travel internationally, they would think that there was a fraud, as an example, right? And so they would block my credit card literally every other week because I was traveling internationally every other week. And now it has smartened up around profiling. So that's all we need to make sure is, when we do this, that it doesn't turn into hey, is this a fraud? Let's block Ninad because he's returning at a rate similar to, some other pattern. But there is other aspects of it, that this is the buying pattern of this individual that also accounts for a much larger, book of business annually speaking, as an example, right? Like, so I think if we could kind of like quickly get the learning curve, I think that's going to be important, or else the experience on the customer side will definitely be impacted, right? And distasteful to walk away, where if I'm being accused of fraud and then say, no, it wasn't fraud. And if that happens 3 or 4 times, now that's an experience I don't want and probably going to end up shifting somewhere else. But it's a very interesting time.
I mean, gosh, I learned this lesson a long time ago when I was doing clean tech and we were doing predictive analytics to optimize home energy use based on thermal data, weather data, like using lots of different data sets. As we all know, the model is only as good as the volume and the diversity of data used to train it. This is a predictive analytics problem to figure out trust, yes, no, where along that perspective. The more data you have, the better job you can do of actually coming up with accurate predictions. So one of the things I love doing is working with our data science team to geek out on some of this stuff, because you're absolutely right. Now you don't need to let your credit card company know that you're going on a trip because the model has learned. So transaction won't be blocked.
I love working with the data science teams as well. Hopefully you're paying them well and they aren't leaving, because I just heard OpenAI was paying people $800,000 as base packages. So,
wow.
Just saying.
Yep.
Pretty competitive.
Yes, it sure is.
Amena, so insightful. Really, really appreciate the time that you gave us today. Want to give you the opportunity to share with those that are interested in diving deeper into reverse logistics or connecting with you. Where can they find information about you, Optoro? How do they connect with you?
Thank you so much, Dan. I've really enjoyed the conversation as well. Anyone who's interested in continuing this conversation, please come visit us at optoro.com. And on our website, to the point Ninad was talking about, there's a WMS versus RMS. How do you think about it? That white paper may be of interest to folks. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn personally, and I'd be happy to, pull in my team and continue the conversation. But really appreciate this conversation. It's been a pleasure.
It has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ninad Acharya, CEO and co-founder of Fulfillment IQ. And I'm here with
Dan Call, CRO and partner at Fulfillment IQ. We're the team behind the Ecom Logistics podcast. Our mission is to provide you with genuine insights from our work alongside logistics leaders to help you improve your supply chain.
In the Ecom Logistics podcast, we share the knowledge and the insights we've gained from working alongside amazing brands, retailers, 3PLs, and VCs, so you can make the most out of your supply chain journey.
If you like what you're hearing, we'd truly appreciate your support with a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting channel. Your feedback not only keeps us going, but also helps others find the podcast. If you think Fulfillment IQ can assist you, or if you have an idea related to logistics, just reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're always up for a chat and ready to explore new possibilities together.
Stay tuned to the Ecom Logistics podcast on your favorite podcast platform for fresh and practical insights into e-commerce and logistics. Until next time, let's keep making a difference.